Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. قال العجلي so this is معرفة من كان يدلس بعبارة دون عبارة. Okay, so this is all going back to not generalizing things. As Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Snowber told us, he said, every single hadith is its own world. Every single hadith narrator is his own world. You need to know that world. That's just not, you can't just generalize. Right? That's where those crude generalizations come in. That's where you get errors. Right? So you need to know. That's why he said, don't use taqrib, use tahdib al-tahdib. And tahdib al-tahdib, you have now the beginning of these granular details of this individual, what is happening with this individual. Right? Same thing in Usul. We just discussed, well, is it this? Is it this? But not in this scenario. What? So you didn't do jama' between Usul and Furu'. When you do tadarrub al Furu', you see specifics. Not in this scenario. Here's an exception. Here's an exception. Here's an exception. As opposed to al hadith. Either sahha al hadith for madhabi. Boom. Apply it. Copy and paste. Done. So you're going to have a oversimplified application in hadith, oversimplification, simplified application in fiqh, and just roll with that. It doesn't work like that. Medicine doesn't work like that. معرفة من كان يدرس بعبارة دون عبارة. قال العجلي إذا قال سفيان بن عيينة عن عمرو سمع جابرا فصحيح، وإذا قال سفيان سمع عمرو جابرا فليس بشيء، يشير إلى أنه إذا قال عن عمرو فقد سمعه منه، وإذا قال سمع عمرو جابرا فلم يسمع ابن عيينة هو من عمرو. Right? Because he's just saying it happened. Amr heard from Jabir. Did you hear him say that? Right? As opposed to when he says an. Right? Which Amr is this? Oh, Amr ibn Dinar. Amr ibn Dinar. Right? Abdullah ibn Dinar, Madani. Amr ibn Dinar, Makki. معرفة الواسطة إذا واسطة. Right? So the term مربوطة changes something from being an adjective to being a concept. Right? Or it changes it something from being a conceptual thing to be a tangible thing. Right? Like tufah, apple. Tufaha, an apple. Right? So now I have an apple in my hand. هذه تفاحة. So the role of the term مربوطة is to change it from the class of apple. Right? I like to eat apple as opposed to an apple. Here is an apple in my hand. Okay? Or is moving it again from that same vague world of al-wasit, the thing that comes between two things, to al-wasita, the intermediary thing. Right? So it's now a thing. Al-khatima, al-fatiha. Right? Ayyina. Ayyina is a sample. Ayyin, specific. Ayyina is a sample. Right? So it's moved it. Wathiqa. Right? Wathiq, something that's trusting or trusted. Wathiqa, a piece of evidence. Right? So you change it to something that's palpable, and then you can an actual instance of that thing, instantiation of that thing. So ومعرفة الواسطة إذا كان ثمة تدليس أو ثقة الواسطة بالعلم أن المدرس لا يدرس إلا عن ثقة. قال أبو عمرو بن عبد البر كل من عرف أنه لا يأخذ إلا عن ثقة فتدليسه وترسيله مقبول. ومراسيل سعيد المسيب ومحمد بن سيرين وإبراهيم النخعي عندهم صحاح. Right? على قول. Right? So Imam Ahmad said the same thing. Sa'id Musayyib an Umar. This is sahih. Right? It's not, it's fine. So the argument that, for example, Imam Shafi'i says is Sa'id ibn Musayyib from Abu Hurairah is fine because we found that they're muttasil. So in reality, it's not an exception to the rule. Whereas here he's saying no, it's not, this is an exception to the rule. Mursal is weak, but marasil of these people is fine, right? Again, عندهم, that's according to some, right? So again, يرجع the kitab, the introduction of the marasil of Abu Dawood, excuse me, with the tahqiq of Sheikh Shu'aib Arnaout, who has a whole discussion that is very, very important. قال بزار من كان يدلس عن الثقات كان تدليسه عند أهل العلم مقبولا. Right. So here's a problem. Here's a problem between the late school and the early school. The early kind of approach. The early approach is more practical. The late approach is more theoretical. Right. And then you see this again with the Shafis in Usul. The way they're explaining something is very logical, whereas the Muhaddithin is really based on their field work. When do they generally have, they've seen problems, right? So give an example, when you look at that discussion of Hassan al-Basri. So Hassan al-Basri narrating from the Prophet ﷺ. Is that a problem? Is that not a problem? In reality, you call it a problem because you have seen a source like this, right, that has problematics. So for example, Aban is working through a hospital in India and they're trying to cut corners. So they have started to buy medicines from a company. Now that company gives them two things. You can either buy these medicines or these other medicines. These other medicines don't have certain, haven't gone through certain criteria. Okay, so a hospital buying medicines from a company. This company is selling them two types of products. Products that have this certification, products that do not have this certification. They have never found any problems in any of the medicines. It's all totally fine. Hospital keeps buying and it just buys the cheaper ones, not a problem. We have never found a problem, as opposed to we've started to find problems. And then after some time, we realized it was those medicines that didn't go through that certification. So in retrospect, not based on theory, in retrospect, we start saying we want that medication to have this, they go through this process, not that one, even if it's more expensive. Okay, so how does it work? Hassan al-Basri, you hear a hadith, so-and-so from Hassan al-Basri, the Prophet said. So-and-so from Hassan al-Basri, the Prophet said. So-and-so from Hassan al-Basri, the Prophet said. None of those hadiths sound weird. There's nothing off with them. And in fact, half of the time, they are the self-same hadiths that other people narrate. So it's fine. Or the opposite. Whenever you see it like that don't go through the same certification process, it doesn't say Hassan al-Basri from so-and-so, then you don't know what's going on, right? So it's not based, nobody's coming along and putting a system. They're saying, we start to hear strange things, stop, let's put some checks and balances in places because harm has happened. Otherwise, by default, like the marasil of, like a mursal hadith is fine. Qala Rasulullah, someone says Qala Rasulullah. If nobody ever lied or made mistakes about the Prophet ﷺ, we would never even care about any of this stuff. But in reality is people do make mistakes, right? And they do lie. So we need to find out. Just give me 1 second, please. Very important. I repeat time and time again that that kalam you can read from textbooks. You can study from textbooks. Fiqh you can study from textbooks. Nahw you can study from textbooks for a number of reasons. Because of the good curricula that exist and because of the nature of the science. Hadith you cannot study from a textbook. The textbook does not explain things to you, right? So that's why the textbooks are late if you look at them, right? Muqaddimat ibn Salah, right? They're all late. Like, because if you go back and you're in the world of Ibn Abi Hatim or Nasa'i, you can only do this thing by working in this thing. Like, it's only through your practice that you learn stuff, right? It's almost like saying, for example, I'm going to learn medicine just by just working in a hospital, right? Imagine, and that's kind of an interesting analogy, right? Like, imagine somebody, there's two people, somebody who went to med school and somebody who just, from the age of 14, they just been in a hospital. Like, they're just an apprentice. That's all they did. So all they did is just saw a brain surgeon work for 20 years and they worked with them. Like, who do you think would be better at that? Do you need to go to
The
med
one
school?
with more practical, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So then you can kind of say then there's actually kind of no point in med school.
But as a system for a generalized, like it's more, like you said, it creates more balances and checks. It's not necessary that
Exactly,
this
checks and
guy,
balances. So in the past, it would only used to be apprenticeship, right? That's how it used to be. And there's certain reasons why you have these things and philosophies, but there are certain things where it's kind of pointless. Let's say law, right? Law, you can go to law school, but it really doesn't mean very much because it's only the court and only interaction and things, and only these things actually mean anything, right? So things vary as opposed to, I don't know, there's many things that, or like a certain specialization, like you couldn't, okay, like so even as a doctor, you haven't been showing that you're kind of updating your facts and those kind of things. It's a problem, right? You're not reading, you haven't published anything ever for the last 20 years. You haven't done any research. You have not shown anything. It's problematic, right? You shouldn't have done any training, right? You need to go to conferences, do training, etc. To see other things that have happened, be parts of, be part of some kind of conference or whatever it is. So anyway, so what I'm trying to
isn't
say
that like
with
case study
hadith,
of Ibn Hazm basically? Like he just went by himself and he did reach interesting conclusion, but there was no checks and balances like in his
you,
whole
um, mm,
like he was mainly through books, right? He didn't do much talaqi, and that's why he sort of
I don't know. I don't know if that's really fair to say that.
okay.
With Ibn Hazm. So he did have shuyukh, okay, and he is an alim. Um, mm, I can't say with an authority. Yeah, so but I think that's a bit of a claim that he's not, it's just hidden. So there's you don't have to luck, you don't have this, or your conclusion is wrong. You know, sometimes like that. It's like you're really, really good, but you're wrong for many reasons. And so that can be the case, right? You're just not right. Um, so Ibn Hazm for me, the more practical and interesting thing with Ibn Hazm is who agrees with him. That's all. Like peer review, right? So who agrees with Imam Abu Hanifa that you cannot join prayers? So and 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 so before him and after him. Okay, great. I guess that's a good fatwa then, right? Who agrees with Ibn Hazm on this or on this? It's like very few people. That you can go to a masjid on your period. Oh, Imam Muzni, possibly. Who else? I don't know. Right? Not really sure. Um, Ibn Mada, same thing in Nahu. Who doesn't believe in taqdeer and things like that? Like you should just be zahiri in Nahu. Like basically nobody. You just say things that are interesting. It's an interesting discussion, but nobody really agrees with you. So that's the bigger issue with Ibn Hazm is just a process. Is here's a fatwa. Who agrees with you? Nobody. Very few. Oh, okay. As opposed to it being invalid or something else. He has an attitude problem, or he had an attitude problem. May Allah forgive him. Right? There's hidda in his uslub. Some people are like that. Right? Some people are just had, right? Kothari. Um, that's not really fundamental, Allahu Alam. So to say it's just because he studied by himself, I don't think that's really 100% true, Allahu Alam. But again, I'm not a specialist on Ibn Hazm. Okay, so according to Ibn Abdul Barr, then كل من عرف أنه لا يأخذ إلا عن ثقة. The problem is what? لا يأخذ إلا عن ثقة عنده, right? قد لا يكون ثقة عند غيره. That's the problem. So هو لا يأخذ إلا عن ثقة. So that's تقليد of his توثيق, which is not necessarily valid. من كان يدلس عن الثقات كان تدليسه عند أهل العلم مقبولا. الله أعلم. ومن المثال ذلك حميد بن أبي حميد الطويل، ثقة مشهور، سمع من أنس بن مالك أحاديث قيل 18 حديثا، وسمع الباقي من ثابت البناني عن أنس، فلا يضر قوله عن أنس لأنه قد عرفت الواسطة وهو ثقة. So this is easy. I know specifically what the gap is. Not a problem. Right? We know that this person is, when he's like, it's just obvious who specifically that person is. This is not a problem. The issue is when you say, oh, we know he's always narrating from ثقات in general. That's a problem. إسماعيل بن أبي خالد كان ثبتا في الحديث، وكان لا يروي إلا عن ثقة سمع الشعبي، وكان ربما أرسل عنه، ولكنه إذا وقف أخبر وقبلوا عن عنته. سفيان كان لا يدلس ولا right, so this is all this there's 5 levels or 6 levels I can't remember now in the طبقات المدلسين by الحافظ ابن حجر. طلحة بن نافع القرشي مولاهم أبو سفيان وصف بالتدليس وفيه مناقشة، وعلى فرض صحته بأنه كان يحفظ حديث جابر بن عبد الله حفظا، وكان سليمان اليشكري يكتب عن جابر. قيل أخذ أبو سفيان كتاب اليشكري وروى منه، فلو سلم أنه اعتمد عليه فلا إشكال، لأن الواسطة معروفة وهو سليمان اليشكري وهو ثقة، كان يمكن الدفاع عنه بأنه أخذ كتاب سليمان للاطلاع عليه ومنازته بحفظه إلى آخره. أن يتابع المدلس من هو الثقة غير مدلس. إذا وافق المدلس ثقة في الرواية عن شيخه حملت على السمع، ووجب العمل بالحديث لأجل رواية الثقة لها خاصة دون غيره. ومثال رواية الأعمش عن عمرو بن مرة عن أبي عبيدة عن أبي موسى، كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يسمي لنا نفسه أسماء، فقال أنا محمد وأحمد والمقفي والحاشر ونبي التوبة ونبي رحمة. تابعه المسعودي عن عمرو بن مرة. ومثل ذلك أن يأتي المدلس في السند مقرونا بغيره في الرواية عن شيخي، ومثل حديث مالك وابن جريج عن جعفر بن محمد عن أبيه عن جابر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رمل الثلاث أطواف. This is إضافة لفظية، الثلاث أطواف من الحجر إلى الحجر. فابن جريج مدلس، وقد اقترن ببالك في رواية عن جعفر، فدل على عدم التدليس من احتمل تدليسه. So again, put a little note. Here he's got الحافظ علاء في جامع التحصيل. That's one discussion. And then just note here طبقات مدلسين by ابن حجر. شنو stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك